Hello, and welcome to episode 26 of 10,000 Stitches Podcast, a weekly chit chat all about the joys of sock knitting. My name is Andy, and I like to knit socks, and I'm currently not in my normal filming environment if you're new here. I am recording from California. Woo! So this is going to be a short episode because I don't really have the usual kind of stuff. Okay, I guess I'll start with my normal intro. So I'm Andy. If you are looking for links to anything that I mentioned, which there probably won't be a ton today, but depending on where you're watching will determine where things are linked. If you're watching this on YouTube, down in the description box below the video will be a link to the blog post for this specific episode. There will also be a link to the Ravelry group for 10,000 Stitches Podcast. You can go to either of those two places, and then underneath the video in the blog post for this episode or the thread for this episode on Ravelry, everything will be linked. If you were looking for me other places on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Purlbug, P-U-R-L-B-U-G. And my blog is at thepurlbug.com, and then there's the 10,000 Stitches Podcast Ravelry group. So yeah, normally I kind of have this thing that I go through, but today my notes are very short. So we're just going to talk a little bit about my current work in progress. We'll talk just a little bit about the knit along, and then normally I would do chit chat, but I don't really want to do that because there's just so much chit chat that I thought I would just do a short little talk about kind of what I've learned from traveling and knitting and taking my knitting with me while traveling, and kind of tips and things that that I use when I'm kind of trying to plan how I'm going to knit and travel. So yeah, this will probably be short. We'll see. Anyway, work in progress. So last week I was working on my Paragon socks, which I thought I was going to take with me, and then the next pair was going to be the Piece of My Heart socks. I kind of scrapped that at the last minute. I decided that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when I talk about traveling and knitting, but that I wanted something just very simple to take with me. I didn't want something heavily patterned. I didn't want to have to think about it, so I wanted to just do a pair of vanilla socks. So I grabbed a couple skeins of some self-striping yarn. I think I showed this last week when I was going through my stash. This is Knit Picks Felici in the Madrigal colorway, so it's pinks and purples and oranges and greens and blues. It's a self-striping yarn, and so I've just been knitting vanilla socks. So I finished up the first one yesterday. So this is a 68 stitch sock, top down US size 1s, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle, Fish Lips Kiss heel. And these were made to fit me, sort of. I don't have a ruler with me, so I was kind of estimating, and they're just a little bit short for me, so I'll probably give them to my mom. But yeah, that's what that yarn looks like knit up, and I like it. I did a pretty long leg on it just because, it's vanilla, it doesn't take a lot of thought. So I did 15 rows of 1x1 twisted rib, and then 65 rows of leg, and then heel. And then 70 rows of foot before I started doing the toe decreases. And the way I did this, I mentioned this with the By the Seine River socks, I think. So those were also 68 stitch socks. And the way I've started doing my 68 stitch socks, because that seems to be just the sweet spot for me, is I do 36 stitches on the back needle and 32 on the front needle. So then my Fish Lips Kiss heel is done over 36 stitches instead of 34, I guess, if I were to divide them equally. And that just gives a little bit more room in the heel, and I like it. So the way I did that to even up the toe was I did 2 rows of decreases only on the the bottom of the foot, so then I had 32 stitches on each needle, and then I decreased like normal. So yeah, that's how that looks. Like I said, I think I said these are a little bit too short, so these will probably be for my mom. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I am not, I've heard other people talk about Knit Picks or the Knit Picks Felici and how the colors can be a little bit meh, and I didn't notice that with my By the Seine River socks. But this one, the only color I'm really disappointed with is the pink, because you can see the pink is not, it's very, variegated, I guess. There's a lot of purple in that pink. And it's just sort of disappointing because you can see spots where the pink should be really nice. It should be this really nice, bright, vibrant pink, but it's just very muddy and purpley. So I'm not super impressed with that. Otherwise, the colors are fine. I don't mind them. So yeah, that's that one. I finished this yesterday. I started it Wednesday, finished it yesterday, which was Sunday. So today is Monday, May 30th when I'm recording, and this episode will go live Tuesday, May 31st. And then I just started the second one. So I I actually wound up the yarn into a ball so that it would stripe in the opposite direction. And then this is the start of the second one. I just started this morning after breakfast. So yeah, that's my work in progress. And then for the knit along, which is the lace socks knit along, which obviously I'm not knitting lace socks right now, but that's okay. We are about halfway through. By the time you see this, we will be exactly halfway through because it will be the end of May. And we currently have, as of right now, 18 finished objects in the finished object thread. So that's really awesome. I've actually been really behind on checking up on Ravelry because I've been traveling and stuff. So I haven't seen any of the new finished objects because partly because like every time I go to check Ravelry, I'm on my phone and that's just not the ideal experience. So I'm hoping later today I'll have time to, on the computer, kind of check up on everything. But I'm super excited to see more finished objects coming in because I like seeing your guys' socks. So yeah, that's all for that kind of stuff. So if you aren't interested in the knitting and traveling kind of stuff now, that's it. That is it for what I'm talking about with my knitting this week. So thanks for tuning in. But I figured I'd just talk for a few minutes about knitting and traveling. So yeah, so like I said, I'm out in California right now. I'm in LA. And before this, we had been in Minnesota for a couple of days. So there's been a lot of traveling going on. It feels as though we've been away from home for weeks. And really, we've been gone less than a week now. But it's just like so busy and so much going on that it's just like, oh my gosh. But anyway, so I have been, I've traveled and knit for quite a while now. And these are just things I've gleaned, not just from when I've been knitting and traveling, but just in general, because when I was in grad school, I did a lot of going back and forth between Nebraska and Minnesota. And while that's not like travel, it's still a lot of, packing up and leaving and being away from home and then coming back home. And I've learned a fair amount from that. So I wrote down some thoughts. So kind of my first tip, I guess, is, and this will obviously depend on your experience level. Some of you guys might be like, yeah, I know. But my first tip is to pack light and be honest about what you think you're actually going to do on vacation. This is when, you're getting ready to leave, you're trying to decide how much knitting you want to bring with you. Be honest with yourself. So this is all I brought. I brought the two 50-gram skeins of sock yarn and one pair of needles, and that's it. Because even though I thought I'd be able to get more than one pair of socks done in a week, obviously that's not going to happen. And this is because you will always be busier on vacation than you think you'll be. I mean, granted, there are exceptions. Like if you're maybe on a cruise or something like that, where there isn't a lot to do, that might be different. But I find that you just always get busier. Things always take longer than you think they're going to. And unless you're one of those people who it's very easy for you to pull out your knitting anywhere, there's just no point. So basically underestimate what you think you're going to do, because if you're in any major city in North America, or I would think Western Europe, you should be able to find a place that has yarn. If you run out and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a whole nother week here, what am I going to do? Here in the US, you can stop by Joann Fabrics or Michaels, and while their selection of yarn isn't great, they do have stuff like Patons Kroy, so you can knit up a pair of vanilla socks, no problem. So, you can always buy more when you're there, but I don't think it's a good idea to sacrifice valuable space in your luggage for yarn that it turns out you're not going to touch. Just a thought. I also advise taking simple projects. So like I said, I took just a pair of vanilla socks because, even when I'm on a plane sitting there for a long time, my brain still gets kind of like, it doesn't want to think too hard about stuff. And, if I want to be able to just pull out my knitting anytime and work on it, I don't want to have to think about like, oh, where was I? What row am I on? I don't want to have to look at a pattern. I just want to be able to sit down and knit and go. So I definitely recommend things like vanilla socks, or like a simple like triangle shawl and if it has like a lace pattern on it, something that you can easily memorize and very easily tell where you are just based on looking at it, or like a basic hat, something like that, or even just a rectangular scarf. If you just want to knit to keep your hands busy, there's nothing wrong with knitting just a basic rectangular scarf. You can always gift it away if you don't want it afterwards, but it'll keep you busy. So I definitely recommend simple projects. I recommend small projects, something like socks or a hat that's maybe one skein. You don't want to be lugging a sweater project around. Definitely something small, easy to pack, easy to carry around. And then my last kind of tip is to take the right tools, and this has sub tips in it, but like take the right tools. So the first thing I think is the right tool is to have a project bag. I have mentioned before how my project bags are typically a little bit unconventional. This is the only like normal project bag that I've ever used. But even still, have something to contain your yarn and your needles, because especially if you're throwing it in like your carry-on bag, you don't want to get it tangled around everything else. You don't want it to get dirty. And for me, this bag is really great because it's very generously sized for a sock project. But the nice thing is that like when we were getting on the plane, I could shove my phone in this bag and a set of headphones, and there was still plenty of room. So that way, this is all I kept with me at my seat. I put everything else in the overhead or underneath my seat, and this was all I needed. I could even put a snack in here, and that's it. This is all I need on the plane or a train or in a car ride or something like that. So remember that a project bag can do more than just be a bag to hold your yarn. It can also be a bag to hold your yarn and then what you need immediately while you're in the process of traveling from one place to another. So yeah, project bag is definitely essential. Then inside the project bag, in terms of needles, I know that we all get worried about flying, especially with metal needles. And as you guys know, my favorites are my ChiaoGus, which are metal. And granted, this is accurate for right now in the US, only on domestic flights, but I have flown with these needles, I think 5 times. I've been through security 5 times with these needles here in the US for domestic flights, and I've never had a problem. I've never even had them want to look at them. They just don't care. So, from my experience, I don't worry about it. To the point where I didn't even think about bringing these. Like, I was just like, yeah, that's fine. They'll be fine. I know that if you're flying internationally, I think I've heard that it's not as much of a problem about getting out of the US, but getting back into the US, like some other airports outside of the country are a lot more strict about this stuff. And I definitely just suggest that if you're nervous, bring wooden needles, or bring needles that you wouldn't be devastated to lose, or pack your nice needles maybe in your checked luggage and bring a junky pair on the plane so that if they get taken away, well, whatever, it's not a big deal. But my experience has been that it's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. So bring what you want to use, but don't bring anything that you'd be devastated if it got taken away, because that's always a possibility. And and if you do get into trouble with your needles at the airport, don't make a scene. Just, the rules are the rules, and there's no point in getting upset about it. So like if they were to take away my needles, I'd be like, well, that's bummer, but okay, I guess I can buy new ones. It's just, you have to just take it all in stride. So that's that. And then the other stuff, so obviously if you're making socks, I say obviously, but with socks, obviously a little darning needle is super important. Make sure it's plastic, because I'm pretty sure you can't bring metal ones on the plane because they are sharp. And just, the less things you can bring in your bag that are going to cause a problem, the better. So plastic. And then the other thing, so I always carry a pair of scissors in my bag. I carry a tiny little pair of scissors in here. Well, you can't bring scissors on planes right now. So what I do instead is I bring a pair of toenail clippers, because they are a multitasker, because if I need to clip a fingernail or something, boom, done. But also a pretty new pair of fingernail clippers or toenail clippers, whatever, will cut through yarn pretty well. Basically what you have to do is you kind of just feed your yarn, okay, better now. Basically you just kind of put your yarn in between the two little chompy bits, and I can show you guys. I guess I probably have a spare bit of yarn in here somewhere. Maybe I don't. Oh, I suppose. So basically what I do with this is I find where the end of my yarn is, which is here. Okay. So you take the end of your yarn, right? And I kind of hold it like this usually, and then I feed it through the chompy bits like that. And then I just kind of chomp down, and it doesn't like cut through the same way a pair of scissors does, but basically you can kind of just chomp on it, keep some tension on it, and then you'll see it has basically worked through the yarn for the most part. That's not going to focus. Maybe. Come on. You don't want to focus, do you? Oh, we almost had it. I don't know. It doesn't. Oh, there we go. So you can see that it's mostly worked through the yarn. So at that point, you can either just yank on it and break that last little thread, or you can do it again in the same place and just chomp through that last little bit, and then you split your yarn. It's not the neatest way to do it, but it works. And that's really the key thing when you're traveling is everything's a little bit inconvenient. So it's a matter of finding what works and doesn't break the rules and is easy to do. So I like to do that. I've been using that trick for a long time. Even sometimes when I'm not traveling, if I just want to have something that will cut the yarn in a pinch, that works for me, and I just will keep a pair of fingernail clippers in my bag. Because how often are you really cutting yarn? Like if it's terribly inconvenient, well, how often are you doing it? Obviously this is not great if you're doing something where you're switching yarn a lot, but for cutting the yarn when I finish off my sock, it works fine. So yeah, those are my travel tips. Basically just keep it simple. Underestimate what you think you're going to do, because you will always be busier than you think you are. And just know yourself. Know what kind of a knitter you are. If you really will finish 5 projects while you're on vacation, then bring 5 projects. But remember that you can always buy yarn on location and knit something then. And just be honest, did you bring 5 projects last time and then you didn't finish them? Probably don't do it this time. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to go enjoy more of the sunshine and loveliness that is California. And in terms of chit-chatty stuff, so I have been recording vlogs. None of them have posted yet by the time you guys will be seeing this, but I have been recording them, and probably next week some of them will have posted, so I will be sure to link them next week, or whenever they have posted. I will be sure to provide links to them. But there's just so much that we've been doing that I can't do it all here. It's better if you just see it. So yeah, that's going to be it for this week. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.